guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Leah. I like to make lifestyle videos. Sometimes I do mom videos, sometimes art, very rarely lately. Today's video is going to be mom related and it is my exclusive pumping journey. So I exclusively pumped and I wanted to talk about my experiences, my journey, what led me to that, everything. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. So what actually led me to exclusively pump? Well, let me tell you, I tried breastfeeding for 1 week. They recommend trying for longer, but it just was not a part of our journey. I was miserable. My nipples hurt so bad. She just could not figure out how to latch. She was losing weight, and the doctor was a little concerned at her appointment. He was like, she definitely has not regained her birth weight yet, and I think that was almost a week. So he was like, he wanted to see her in a couple days. He's like, the next time I'd like to see her. And so I just had a lot of anxiety. They were so kind, so warming. It wasn't like I felt like I was in trouble or anything, but I just was in such a dark mental place, and it was the only thing surrounding motherhood that was giving me the depression, and I could feel myself spiraling and just going down into a dark space. And so I just knew it was not best for my mental health, and I wasn't really ready to just start paying for formula and like accept that that was a part of it. So I had a breast pump given to me by my best friend's sister. You know what? My boobs are swollen. They hurt so bad. Let me just get it out. And then I was able to put it into bags immediately. And then I put it into bottles and she started drinking, and our next appointment, she was perfect. He was like, I have no complaints whatsoever. She looks wonderful, you're doing a great job, whatever you're doing. And my supply was pretty good, so I just kept going with it because I was like, why not? Let's just try this out. And so I exclusively pumped for 13 months total, which is crazy. I started weaning at 12, but my supply did not want to deplete right away, so it took about another month to fully stop. Every once in a while they get a little tight and I just feel like I need to let it out just a tiny bit, but that's rare at this point at 15 months postpartum. I wanted to talk about my supplies that I used because everybody uses something different, and these are the ones that worked the best for me. So number one is the Spectra number 2, the pink one. This is the one that has to be plugged into the wall. My insurance only covered this one. They did not get me the second or the first one that you can do batteries with, which was a little frustrating, but it was fine. It worked amazing. The hospitals recommend specifically having a hospital grade because this is what establishes your supply instead of just portable ones. They say portable ones are great for convenience, but you should not rely on that to make sure that your supply is going to maintain and be, the best it can be. And then my cousin got me this nipple cream. She got it specifically for breastfeeding because she breastfed for a little bit and her nipples were also always cracked and always in pain. But honestly, I found this so absolutely helpful for just putting it into the flange before I would put them on, and then it was just perfect. And so I always kept it in the back here for storage, and I just always put it on beforehand, and I never had issues with cracking, pain, nothing. Once I stopped trying to breastfeed, it was no more pain. And then for portable ones, I went with the Willow Go. These were amazing. I absolutely love them. The only thing is that the top is where you pour it out of, so if you were to bend over at any point, it would just spill out if you were a little up higher. And I ended up having to get the 7-ounce instead of the 5 just because every once in a while they would fill up a lot more than I was prepared for, especially when I was starting to wean. I would get more in one sitting instead of smaller bits throughout the day. But these, amazing. They worked perfectly. I'm going to definitely store these and keep for later too because they definitely will work if we have another baby. I don't have it with me. I think it's out in the garage, but I had a travel pumping bag and I used that thing for work, for anywhere. Right at first it was frustrating because we had the bottle bag, we had the pumping bag, and then we had the diaper bag, so everywhere we went it was 3 bags all the time. And then the older she got, the less bottles she needed so that we could combine the travel and the bottle bag. It wouldn't fit this one definitely in the top, but I never took this one with me. This one was always for home until I went to work, and I was only pumping once at work for a month maybe. Then I took just a bigger bag in general and I left that at work because I had a room only to myself. But it fit my Willows perfectly at the top. it was wonderful. I could put both of them together. Everything's stored right now because I'm done, so I have to pull everything out of my little tote bag over here. So I used Spectra, and then I also used, I don't know what brand this one is. I think I found this on Amazon, but I also used Mayo Mom, and I think these two were the most similar to each other. And then this one is actually 24, and this one's 21. I kind of went back and forth on one nipple where it would be different sizes, and you should always be double checking because your nipple size can change throughout your journey. So sometimes if it's pulling a little weird, double check, because you might actually be using the wrong size, and then that's why you're not getting the supply you used to. So I had little inserts that I could pull in and out whenever I wanted to kind of make sure that this one was doing better for this side. I think it was my left side that was always random. But yeah, honestly, I loved these. And then honestly, I used any brand of the little duckbills. And then for these, I also just found a like cheap little pack on Amazon for the replacements for the lines. And then I also had, when I was first trying it out, I also used Hakas, and these were wonderful. I loved being able to use these. If nothing was clean and I had to use like a manual pump, then I would put a Haka on the other side and it would catch any drippage while I was working on one, and then I would flip them. Speaking of manual pumps, I had the Lancino one, and this worked great. Honestly, like I had no complaints. I know other people like the Mandela and things like that, but this just worked. I didn't have issues with supplies, so that's not everybody's experience, so I didn't really have to like find something that really worked for me. That is definitely not the case for most people. A lot of people have issues with supply, and a lot of people have issues getting a decent amount out. So I recommend just talking to lactation consultants and looking up people who are more realistic, because not everybody has a large supply, and a lot of what you see people post online is a large supply, and that's definitely not the norm. I am definitely not the norm. I was very blessed, and that's another reason I kept with it, is because I was like, if I'm making and producing this much milk, why should I stop? Because I'm saving us money. I work at a job that I can sit at a desk, and so I didn't even have to clock out to go pump. I could just put my willows in and sit at my desk, which was wonderful. I love being able to do that, so I got to save my actual lunch break for me. Then I wanted to talk about, I used the Spectra cups, and then I also, my friend gave me these ones. These are Motif. These were great too, just to be able to have options. And then when I was weaning, I ended up having to pick up 8 ounces because I was pumping 3 times a day and I was getting 7 ounces at least. Sometimes I would get 8, which was crazy. So ended up needing a bigger amount. And this is the Matiz. I just looked up 8 ounce on Amazon and I found a 4-pack and it was perfect. Actually, I think it was 6-pack. I don't remember. So for the methods that I tried out, I originally, when I would do it, I would just pump it and then I would put it into bags, and I think I was doing like 2 to 3 ounces per bag, and then keeping it in the fridge for 4 days and then moving it over to the freezer if I didn't use it. All that was doing was being a complete waste of all my bags. I went through so many bags so fast, and it was like, what's the point of doing this if she's just going to drink it again immediately? And I didn't want to pump into bottles because I typically made and produced more than what she was drinking. I think I was producing like at least 5 ounces, maybe 6 ounces per side in one sitting, and she was drinking 4 ounces at that point. So it was like, why would I take it out and put it in a bottle just to put it into another bottle? And it just didn't make sense to me. So I was doing some research and I found the pitcher method, and that worked for me the entire time I was pumping. It was exactly what I needed. I picked up the Dr. Brown, I think this is technically actually for formula, but it has like this design, perfect, amazing. All you have to do is pull up and it spins, and so it like mixes everything. So if you're doing formula, highly recommend this as well. But for me, when breast milk sits, it gets that fat on top, so I would do this and it would just get everything moving so that I could pour it out and not have the fat all the way at the top. It would be evenly distributed before I would give it to her. The problem is I'm an overproducer, so this very quickly became too little for me, which is an amazing problem to have, and not everybody has this issue. She was drinking, did I write that down? So she drank about 30 ounces a day. I think she was up to 6 ounces 4 or 5 times a day. I don't even remember at this point. And I produced around 40 to 45 ounces a day. I think this is 38 ounces. And I quickly found that when I would pour it in, and then I would take out my 30 ounces, and then the next day I would have a little bit extra, and then the next day I'd have a little bit extra. I always had milk in my little cups, which is why I needed my extra cups. I would always have it sitting next to the pitcher, and the pitcher was full. And I was like, this is not working out. I need something else that'll hold everything I need so that I can have my cups washed and prepped and ready for the next time I need to pump. And then that is when I picked up this bad boy from Amazon. This is a 64 ounce like glass cup, and it worked perfect. It doesn't have the mixer part in it, but I just kind of would swirl it around and it worked amazing. You just pop it. You can use it for tea, for anything, but I used it for breast milk. It was with me for the majority of my journey, and it was wonderful. And it definitely, every once in a while, it would be a little too full if I didn't prep the bottles ahead of time. But I liked to be able to have my bottles prepped, everything ready to go, and then milk stays in the fridge for 4 days, and then after 4 days it goes to the freezer. So what I would do is I would do 4 days of this, and then on the 4th day, everything that I pumped that day I would keep in the little cups and not add to this, so that at the end of the day my routine was I would do specific days instead of every 4. So I think I did every 3 and then every 4, so that it was every Thursday and then every Sunday. Put everything that was left in here into bags. And what I don't recommend doing is doing 5 ounces, because when you start weaning, if you want to use up your supply and you need to break it up into bottles, and then you're trying to wean down to do like whole milk or anything like that, you're only at 5 ounces, so you can only do a certain amount. If I had them in 2 ounce increments, I could do a little bit less and a little bit less and not waste any breast milk. So I recommend doing smaller amounts, like 2 to 3, maybe 3 to 4, around there, instead of 5 ounces. And then the day of milk would go into this after it was washed and clean, so that I had milk ready to be put into bottles that next day for daycare. Worked for me perfectly. It was a perfect routine. And yeah, and the only thing you have to do is you just put the little cups in to the fridge so they cool down before you add them to the already cooled milk that's already in the pitcher, because you don't want to add warm milk into the cold milk. It's just not the way to do it. I just wanted to share this little bit because I was an overproducer. We bought a deep freeze because my freezer was overflowing, and then pretty soon the deep freeze was also overflowing, and it became a problem very quickly because I was like, I'm producing so much, because my plan was to use up all of the frozen breast milk for daycare, but I was making so much every day that there was no point in doing that, because then I had so much milk left over at the same time, and I was a little too prideful to like go down in times right away, because I didn't want to immediately like ruin my supply. I was very terrified of ruining my supply because I had such a big one. And so what I did instead was donated. I went through the milk bank, got like all of my blood work done and everything to be approved, and then I ended up finding a place here in town that actually is like related to the place that I gave birth, so it was really cool to like kind of give back. The way I would do it is I would put all of my milk bags into a gallon bag, so I don't even know how many are in that, depending on, but it was a lot. And I did 10 of those 3 times, and I'm still using up my frozen supply currently, and I stopped 2 months ago. And then all of the main things that I learned for my scheduling and everything came from Amanda from exclusivepumping.com. Her website was so helpful for any questions I had. Highly, highly, highly recommend her. And all of my scheduling that I did pretty much came directly from her. It worked out for me. I think I tweaked it here and there, but pretty much I followed exactly what she did. For the first few months, you are establishing your supply. So what that means is you want to pump every 2 hours to make sure that your body doesn't think that you don't have to produce more, because you're trying to make it learn that you need to produce more because your baby needs a lot right at first. I stuck to every 2 hours when she would need to eat. Every time she wanted to eat, I would give her a bottle and then I would pump. I even did this at night for like a small amount, just because she was next to me in the bassinet and I had a timer, so I didn't want to wake her up every time I needed to pump every 2 hours. So I cut that out pretty quickly, and especially she was starting to sleep longer stretches throughout the night. that honestly, I think by 1 month I was only doing when she would wake at night for a bottle. I would give her a bottle and then I would lay her back down in her bassinet and then I would pump. So after 3 months, I cut out pumping at night completely. Like, there was no need for me to keep doing it because I had a good supply, I had a big supply, and I needed my sleep. So every time that she would wake for a bottle, it was about every 4 hours at that point. We'd go, make her a bottle, give it to her, lay right back down. And there were a few times that I woke up engorged just because I was going a much longer stretch than I used to, and it was a little painful, but then my body adjusted pretty quickly and it wasn't a big deal. And that is for every single time I cut out a pump. Your body gets engorged and it wants to pump when the time is, but you get used to it, it adjusts, and it gets better. For exclusive pumping, Amanda on her website recommends 120 minutes a day. So whether that be a lot of pumps for a small amount of time each, equaling up to 120 minutes, or less pumps for longer bits of time. So that's how I kind of gauged it. If I would cut out a pump, I would add time to the other ones to make up for that 120 minutes. So my routine that I stuck to for a few months, I think it was from 4 months to 6 months, I think, was 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., and 10 p.m. for 20 minutes each pump. I would go from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. without pumping, and then everything else was like around 3-ish hours. This worked great, but then the 6 o'clock started becoming a problem because that's right when I would get home and I would often miss that. So at 6 months, I cut that out. At 4 months, I cut out. And so I don't think I adjusted any time, but I added 5 minutes to each pump time. My supply didn't dwindle at all, just my 10 p.m. became a little bit bigger was the only thing that changed. And at 6 months, my schedule was 6 a.m., 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 10 p.m. for 30 minutes each. I moved the times around a little bit to cut out what time did I cut out? The noon. This one worked really well for me. I feel like this was very easy because 10 and 3 were very easy for me to do at work because I worked from 8 to 5. I was already sitting at work established. I wasn't getting there. I wasn't driving. I wasn't preparing to leave. And then at 10 months, I dropped down to 3 times a day. And honestly, I probably could have done this a lot sooner. So my 3 times a day was 6 a.m., 2 p.m., and 10 p.m. for 45 minutes. And this also was so easy to keep to. And then I was also doing a dream feed at this time. I think right up until 6 months is when I stopped doing the dream feed. But I would go feed her at 9, and then I would pump at 10 and go to bed. She would sleep almost to the morning, I think, by doing that. And then the longer we went, the more she would get closer and closer to sleeping to the morning. I think she would wake up at 5, and then all of a sudden she was waking up at 6. So that worked out really well. And then once I moved her to her own room, and then it was 6 months, it's harder and harder to get them up because they wake up and it's harder to wake or go back down. So I stopped doing it, and she was great. And then at 11 months, I did 6 a.m. when I would get up in the morning, and then 7:30 p.m. right after she would go to bed. So I would either have my husband put her to bed so that I could pump, or I would put her to bed and then go pump immediately after. We take turns putting her to bed. And that one I did for an hour each time, and that was the hardest for me to keep to. An hour of sitting there is very hard to do, and actually I would wake up at 5 to pump because I needed to leave at 6:30. And then I was also super sore and emotional because I was getting closer and closer to weaning, and so all these emotions are going through my mind of I've been doing this for a year, I'm not ready to stop, but I really want to stop. And then I was sore because I'm going much longer in between. I was trying to go as close to 12 hours in between each pump. Very sore, very emotional. And then that is when my supply almost reversed and was no, we need to maintain. And I was making 8 ounces each side, which is hence why I had to get my 8-ounce cup. And then after her birthday at 12 months, I started cutting down the time by 5 minutes every couple of days. So I think I took 2 to 3 days to give my body time to adjust, and my body held on for dear life. It was crazy. I think I took plenty of pictures, so I'll include pictures of how hard my body tried to produce as fast as possible and as much as possible in that first little bit that I was giving it. And I was a overproducer at the beginning of the pump. Some people, they get a little bit at the beginning of the pump, and then by the end of the pump is when they get everything. I was getting everything at the front because my body was like, get it out, and I basically had to let down like the whole time. And so that took about a month to fully wean down by 5 minutes every few days, give my body time to adjust, let it breathe, really make sure I wasn't trying to empty. It was a weird mindset of trying not to empty because I had been doing that for months. And then it got to the point that I just needed to release pressure whenever I would feel it really painful. So in the morning sometimes I would just like a little squeeze into a cup. By the time I was actually like down to nothing, my body accepted it, and then it wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. During the like wean down process, it was pretty painful, but once we were done, it was okay. And then the very last day that I pumped, because it was just so painful, I pumped November 16th was the very last day I pumped, and I got 1.5 ounces out. So I took a little picture of me with the last milk that I produced, which was kind of fun and very sad at the same time, like very bittersweet. But I'm very honestly glad and happy that I did it. We ended up never having to buy formula, which there's nothing wrong with needing it or giving it or preferring it, but I personally just never wanted to go that route. I was very blessed and privileged and lucky to be able to make enough to not ever need it. But I hope this video was helpful and informative for you guys if you're also thinking about exclusively pumping. I recommend, if you have the mental capability to sit there and keep to a schedule, and it's not going to be very tolling on your body, because it can be, and it's definitely not for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with not wanting to do that or like accepting that it's not for you. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I don't know if I'll do it a second time around, but the first time around it wasn't as bad as it could have been. She waking up, that's like perfect timing. But that is the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're still here, subscribe and like this video if you liked it. Anything you would like to see mom related or lifestyle related, please let me know. I love to hear from you guys, and if you want to see anything specific, I would love to know that. But that is the end. I'm gonna go. I hope everybody has a great day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.